everyone, and thanks for joining us this Thanksgiving weekend. We are live on Zoom and live streaming to YouTube as long as the power holds out. We've had a couple brief flickers here in the last hour, but hopefully the power remains stable. I'm sure Matt will just keep going with it if we have that happen. In just a minute, I'm going to be introducing our special guest, but before that, a reminder that if you're catching this event on YouTube, you can join us on Zoom for these events. To get the login information, go to our meetup group at meetup.com/CFL Freethought. You can join us there and be sure to RSVP for upcoming online events and put them on your calendar. This event is part of our reoccurring educational events that we continue to stream as YouTube events. You can find all of our past educational events and follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/CFL Freethought. And lastly, if you want to be sure that you get our monthly email updates for upcoming activities, all of which are online right now. So you can go to tinyurl.com/CFFC newsletter. Give us your email and any other contact information that you'd like, and we promise to try to keep in touch regularly. Of course, we hope that you're already following us on Facebook. You can find us there at CFL Freethought. Also, we hope that you're going to join us for an upcoming social event that we have frequently, weekly, sometimes every 2 weeks. All of these are going to be listed on Zoom, on Meetup, and you'll have the Zoom login information there. If you're on Facebook, you can find us at CFL Freethought again. If you're in the Zoom meeting with us today, your microphone is muted so you don't accidentally interrupt the conversation. You can find the chat option available at the bottom of the screen on your computer. Feel free to chat with one another there, ask questions. If you're on a mobile device, just tap the screen and it should appear as an option for you to type as well. Chat is where we want you to ask questions. So put those in there and we'll get to as many of them as we can today. All right, so with that, let's get started. Based on the number of participants today, I would say our guest needs no introduction. And to get right to the conversation and take full advantage of his time, I will be very brief in my introduction. Matt Dillahunty is a member of the Board of Directors of American Atheists. He is a past president of the Atheist Community of Austin, and he is a regular host of their long-running program, the Atheist Experience. And I think that's probably the way most people have discovered him. A few years ago, he started a YouTube page and a Patreon account, Atheist Debates. That is really a great place to tune up your arguments and to support his work. He also recently started a new show aptly called The Hang Up. So be sure to check that out on YouTube. Matt has been a wonderful supporter of the work we do here in Central Florida. He's been a guest at a local event back in 2015. He's been at Free Flow in 2015 and 2019. He was our guest on the last Freethought cruise back in 2019. So Matt, welcome back to Florida.
Thank you. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I realize that in times like this, we're all doing this virtually. We're all here in a Zoom meeting, and I could have done this for Texas, but I love the people in Florida so much that I drove from Austin all the way to Orlando just so that I would, be close to you guys while I'm seeming far away. Actually, that's not entirely true, but I am here in Orlando at least for another hour. I'm going to be driving back to Texas tonight. I'm happy everybody's here. I love the fact that you guys are not only doing these events, but that you're going to call them educational events. Hopefully you get some folks who are perhaps more educational than just what you're going to get out of me today. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm working on, what's been going on with COVID, the hang up a little bit. So some of this will be kind of like a advertisement, and then I want to get to questions because that's where everybody has the most fun, and you guys are going to get what you want out of this. I'm not actually going to be monitoring chat, but I'm sure the questions will be fed to me a little bit later. As most of you probably know me from the Atheist Experience, some of you who may have been on the Freethought cruise might have got to see some magic tricks, and you'll understand that this is what I do all the time whenever I get an opportunity. So if I can get Jocelyn seems to be frozen. Are we all frozen? Am I frozen?
Okay.
I'm just going to keep going anyway.
No,
I need a volunteer from the audience who would like to make predictions about them.
We need somebody.
And you can just unmute the person and put us both up, and we'll go from there.
Looks like we've dropped.
I'll do it.
Never mind.
Who'd we get?
Hold on one second. So we actually lost power here at the house, but I'm on mobile. So if you got this, Matt, you keep going with it.
All right. I've got it. I'm going to keep going. David just told me he lost power at the house, and we're going to keep doing this. When we get that back, I'll get a volunteer for this. I have hosted the Atheist Experience for about 15 years, which is probably where most people know me, but I also traveled around doing lectures and debates at events like this and magic shows on occasion. I was told by a friend of mine that YouTube is demonetizing videos that mention specifics about the pandemic. So we're supposed to refer to it as the Backstreet Boys reunion tour because, that's exactly what you'd expect from 2020. And I've been pretty much locked in my house since March. But one of the things that we learned throughout this is while we own a building and we have a studio and we've produced the show from the studio, I have probably the best team of people you could put together on the tech end, on the video end, on the audio end. And we've been able to continue doing the shows with everyone remote. And thanks in part to donations, what we ended up doing was getting, I already had a studio built up at home, but everybody else involved in all of the shows because the AC does Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, Secular Sexuality, nonprofits, and other shows. We made sure that we got decent cameras for people, decent mics, decent lighting. And we've learned that I don't need to be at the studio in Austin for us to take calls and have hopefully good shows. I can be anywhere and so can the other people. And that's been really nice. The unfortunate thing is not being able to have contact with other human beings, as I'm sure a lot of you are dealing with. But I decided that I wanted to do more. I've been the president of the Atheist Community of Austin twice. I'm not currently. I resigned a month or so ago. I'm still on the board of directors. But what we discovered is that I don't have the time to do the specifics that are needed during COVID. And Vern, who is outstanding, has been doing exactly that and doing a wonderful job. And so Vern Grainer is now the president of the ACA. And what that did is it freed me up to start another show. Because while I work on the Atheist Experience, that's entirely volunteer, and it limits me because we're a nonprofit corporation. There are things that I can't talk about. I can talk about some political things and I can get into issues and have discussions about issues with people, but I can't endorse candidates. And when we were back on public access TV, we couldn't even encourage people to go vote because we were, as a nonprofit, we were limited and we couldn't do calls to action. So I couldn't say, go buy this book, go to this show, go vote. I couldn't instruct anyone to do anything. And so I started a new program recently, a couple months ago, called The Hang Up. So it's on a network on YouTube called The Line, which was started by Mr. Atheist Jimmy Snow. And I love it. I've been having so much fun. It's on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock. And one of the things, it started as a joke. Somebody said, hey, you're going to do this new show. What are you going to call it? And somebody said, well, you should call it The Hang Up. And I was like, no, because I'm known for hanging up with people. I don't want a show called that. And after about 5 seconds, I realized, no, it's actually the perfect name for the show. And it's taken an interesting twist because each week I talk about what my hang up is for that week, what's been bugging me. And I try when I can to make sure that I get some experts in to talk about it. And over the last couple of months, this show has focused on the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, legal issues surrounding the election, surrounding can Trump pardon himself, what's going to happen, what's the worst thing, are we going to have to deal with faithless electors? And I had both Andrew Seidel on from the Freedom from Religion Foundation and Andrew Torres from Opening Arguments, both lawyers, both well-versed in constitutional law. I may, in fact, have both of them on the show at the same time. But it's great to be able to have discussions that aren't merely limited to religion. Now, there's no plans for me to stop doing the Atheist Experience. I'll probably argue about gods until somebody decides it's time for Matt to stop talking, in which case I'll stop doing the arguments publicly. But the Hang Up's been going really well. I've enjoyed doing it. I still look forward to doing the debates and the magic shows once we get out of this situation and we can actually travel and sit there. But I've learned quite a bit about myself since essentially being locked up at home. And I used to think that I was really good at being alone. Granted, I've lived the last 15 years of my life pretty much in public. I'm openly accessible to anybody that wants to. You can email, you can call. I stream games on Twitch and people can come in and hang out and ask questions. And then I'll do events like this. If it weren't for the Zoom meeting type of thing, I probably would have lost my mind around maybe June, mid-July. I didn't realize that I'm nowhere near as good at being alone as I thought I was. I like being alone. I don't like being alone for months in a house. And this is really kind of opening my eyes to, there are people, even absent COVID and the restrictions, who have basically been locked up in their houses for years for various reasons, whether it's physical health reasons, mental health reasons, just generally disenfranchised by society. And I think that once I get out the other side of this, at least part of my efforts as a humanist, I'm going to be working towards making sure that we do what we can for people who have to live isolated all the time. I don't want to bring everybody down, and I genuinely hope that all you are doing well. If we got everybody back, if I got a volunteer, I could do that trick, talk about a couple other things, and then start taking questions.
I'll be a Huckleberry.
All right. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself? I'm a big fanboy. Sorry.
All right. Well, we'll have some fun. This is quick and easy, and I'm going to make predictions about decisions that you're actually going to make. I have a set of blue cards and a set of red cards. Which one would you prefer? They're identical, other than the color on the back.
Blue.
You're going to have the blue. Now, you'll see that the blue, they have these symbols on them. I'm going to show you my cards do too. They're from the ESP decks. So you have a circle, which is one line, and a plus, which is two wavy lines, or two lines. And then there's the wavy lines, which is 3. Then there's also a square, which would be 4 lines, and the star, which is 5. And I am going to make my prediction right here in front of you. I have a plastic board here. I'm going to put the red ones in here in an order. I'm going to ask you questions because I may have to change these a little bit, Michael.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite color?
Yes.
Cool. I don't want to know what it is because somebody might think that has something to do with this trick, but I like the fact that you have a favorite color. I think I have all my predictions in line. Now, these blue cards here, I'm going to hold them up one at a time, but I'm going to hold them so you can't see them. And then you tell me where you think the match is. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for this one?
3.
3. Wow, this one does not want to go in slot number 3. Maybe you're wrong. All right, this one here, which slot?
1.
1. This
4.
one. 4.
2.
2. Now we've got one last one. You can put it in 5 or you can swap it with another one. I want to make you sure that you have a free choice to do that. So I can put it in 5 or I can swap it with another one.
I'll swap it.
Okay, what do you want to
With
swap?
1.
Swap it with 1. All right, I'll hold that right here. We'll pull 1 out, put it down here. Come on.
Kind of like the Monty Python problem in statistics.
Yes, always switch. The thing is, if I got this right, not only does that mean that I knew what you were going to do, but I also knew that you were actually going to switch. So if we look, you have matched
Nice.
right down the line, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Thus endeth the magic trick that is required The only thing, thank you very much for your help, Michael. I appreciate it. The only thing that's exceptionally weird about this sort of Zoom meeting is that I'm sitting in this this room here and it's empty, and I know there's an audience out there, and I haven't actually gotten a chance to look at anybody's face. I hope all of you guys are doing well. There's only one last thing I wanted to touch on before I want to get questions, because I want to make sure that everybody, there's like 40 some odd people here, and if everybody had a question, there's no way we're going to get through it in time. But I spent a great deal of time focusing on the election and focusing on it both from a political aspect and from a secular humanist aspect of, you know, what I wanted for the future. And because of that, I did shows that focused on what's going to happen with the Supreme Court and what's going to happen around this election. But I want to remind people of a couple of things, which I'm sure you all know, but I hear far too frequently from people in the secular community, oh, my state constitution prohibits atheists from running for office. And hopefully everybody's aware that while some state constitutions still have that language in there, it's not constitutional at all. The Supreme Court has ruled on this, and anyone who wants to can run for office, irrespective of whether they have a God belief or not. But I would love for atheists, agnostics, secular humanists, free thinkers, whatever label they use, to consider not only potentially running for office, and you don't have to run for president. The local races are important, and the local races are where we're probably going to make the biggest inroads. Once school boards, state boards of education, city councils start having more and more secular representation, and the cities don't fall apart, and in fact you see some improvement, and maybe you see a little bit of humanism at work, where we are working to help the individuals who are disenfranchised, the homeless populations. Austin has a massive homeless population. Getting people in those offices is key. And you guys almost did it here with Jocelyn, and I was rooting for her from Texas. But we need more of that, because quite frankly, while I'm an unabashed liberal, progressive, whatever, and I was voting blue, absolutely, and I'm happy that Biden has won the election personally. It still means that I'm being represented in the highest office by a Catholic, and a fairly serious Catholic, and not a secular humanist, not someone who has the same views on many subjects. There's so many things where I disagree with whoever's running. And there's plenty of places where each of you are likely to disagree with me as well. But we're probably not going to get a candidate for high office that is openly atheistic or secular, or even really throws too many bones our way in conversations and discussions in the big elections. But where we can do the most good is in the smaller elections. And one of the ones this isn't small that I'm getting ready to talk about. This is a big deal. The Georgia runoff election that's going to take place in January. If it weren't potentially illegal and problematic, I would almost be willing to, rent a place in Georgia, change it to my home of residence so that I can go there and vote in January. That's how important this is. And the things that people need to remember is to make sure, in order to make sure that we have the best chance we have of having the type of Senate that is at least more favorable to secular humanists, is to make sure that we make every effort to get the vote out, to be supportive, and to try to remember that the perfect is the enemy of the good. If you sit around and wait for a perfect candidate, you'll never find one. Even if you voted for yourself, you're not going to find a perfect candidate, because I disagree with everybody, including me. I've disagreed with me on a number of occasions. But getting people involved, particularly as secular activists, where we have a community of people, I don't want to just see the atheist community of X, where it's just 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people who get together once a month and talk about yep, there's no God. Let's pat ourselves on the back again. And oh God, did you see this stupid argument that somebody else made? And did you watch Matt lose his shit on the show and then hang up on that person? I think he was right. I think he was wrong. And then you argue. We have to be willing to bend a little. It's a principle of cooperation. It's how we move forward in a society where everyone is not going to agree fully. And despite the past 4 years, and despite the fact that 2020 is a terrible year, good things have happened to me in 2020. Not the least of which is that I'm in Florida on a video call talking to you guys instead of being at home alone. We need people active, both helping out those people in our community that are needing help and motivating and inspiring the rest of us to take action and make sure that we're getting the vote out, that we are never again should we be in a position where the secular community can just be summarily ignored. That's what's happened. And there are a number of people, I've seen arguments on how we best go about making sure we're not ignored. I don't think that there's a one right answer to this, but the easiest way I know of to not be ignored is to make sure that we are speaking up loudly, honestly, accurately, not misrepresenting the people who we may view as opposition, rather than just getting frustrated and saying, well, there's nobody here for me. There's nobody here running that represents me. There's nobody here who looks like me, who sounds like me, who seems like me. It's not worth it. I don't feel represented. You have to actually push to make sure that you are going to be represented. That's where my focus is, at least for the next couple of months, since I can't travel and do debates or magic shows at all. I hope to see all of you when this is over. I hope you're all healthy and happy. I think the questions that you're submitting are going to be read to me, although I don't know if they're going to maybe turn mics on, but I'm happy to hear all of you. And yeah, I've got like 40 minutes or so until I've got to head out of town. So please start firing questions, and I'll do my best to say I don't know 100 times and not provide any useful information.
Thank you so much, Matt. I want to apologize for my audio and disappearing. We're now connected to the neighbor's Wi-Fi, so hopefully it'll be strong enough to keep going. Yes, I know the neighbors, so it's okay to do that. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree with you so much. I think that we do need to be out and proud. One of the things that I think, and I realize this isn't a platform for me to be talking about my opinions too much, but I think that finding issues that you think are really important. So if it's all about the environment, if it's all about whatever, is go and work with the organizations in your area, be out and proud about who you are, and work together with people, because I really believe in building bridges. And I think that we can get so much more done as a country if we would say, you know what, I really want to fix this river problem. I'm going to go and work alongside the people who I don't agree with on these other issues, but we're going to get this done. And I think when you're done with that project, a lot of times you've made new friends and they think less negatively of that out and proud atheist.
It's something,
just my two cents.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. It's something that we've seen before with, for example, we'll often joke about how someone may be very against the LGBT community until they have a daughter, a niece, or whatever who comes out to them, and now all of a sudden this changes their mind. It's easy to vilify people when you don't know anyone in that group. And that's why it's essential that individuals in the secular community, yes, you're going to have to work with some people who don't like you, but the reason they don't like you is because they don't know you. And so once you work with them, and they're all of a sudden now it's like, hang on a second, I know this wonderful atheist person down the street who helped with this and that. Maybe we shouldn't open every session with a prayer, or maybe we should just have, nice thoughts expressed. And sometimes it could be somebody's prayer, and sometimes it could be just an invocation from a entirely secular perspective. If you're handing out food, like we have in Austin, I mentioned the massive homeless population. There's a couple of organizations, both Atheists Helping the Homeless and Humanists at Work, who are regularly downtown feeding, clothing, passing out socks and toiletries and everything else. And while they're standing there doing this, the line of homeless people stretches, for an eighth of a mile or so, and they're coming through the line. And one of the most common questions that they ask is, "Oh, what church are you with?" Because everybody else who's doing this sort of thing is with a church. And now all of a sudden, if you want that sandwich, well, it comes attached with a sermon first. But we don't do that. We're just out there doing good and doing good things. And as soon as they see that, it not only changes the mind of perhaps homeless individuals about who atheists and secular humanists and freethinkers are, but it also changes the church's minds, because we're set up here with 10 tables passing out stuff, and there are churches set up all around us as well. It's a chance to say, hang on, yeah, we may disagree on A, B, C, and D, but that doesn't mean that we're necessarily terrible. I don't know. How are we doing the questions here? I have access to chat. Jocelyn seems to have frozen up again.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Take a look at the chat. There's where we're pulling from.
Okay, so you want me to just go? Let me see if I can maximize the chat here, and I'll just read through them since my internet is working, which is nice.
So I can.
Oh, you've got an echo now. So somebody from Calgary, warm welcomes. Let's see. Do you think it's possible to use a humanist moral framework? This is from Michael. Thank you, Michael. And thanks for the help. Do you think it's possible to use a humanist moral framework to reach a typical conservative position on a single issue, such as John Stuart Mill using compassion to argue for the death penalty? If so, what kind of pitfalls should one be wary of? So I have a difficult time starting with secular humanism and getting to many sort of right-wing issues. Conservative positions, the ones that I can understand that would be still consistent with humanism tend to be more fiscal in how are we going to spend our money together rather than the social issues. The biggest problem that I have is I run across people, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody here, I'm just speaking my mind, but quite frankly, I run across people who say, oh, I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal. And what that says to me is, I really want us to have good things, I just don't want to pay for them. And that means that you're prioritizing the bottom line, the dollar bill, the profit, you're prioritizing profit over people. This is something I did a debate with Dinesh D'Souza on March 1st in New York. It's online. And this is something that I managed to catch him on and call him out on several different things. It was, this was pre-COVID, so we didn't dip into that. But every time he and I came to odds, came to a disagreement on an issue that was social, he always, well, or repeatedly, perhaps not always, went to what the financial impact was. How's the market going to react? If this is a real thing, why is, I think he did, why is Obama buying a $4 million house in Florida or something if climate change is a real thing? I mean, that was his bad argument against why we should be concerned about climate change. So while I think there are compassionate conservatives, and I think there are ways to get to compassionate positions, I don't know specifically what one would be, because all of my positions that I'm aware of are justified from something, from all of my secular humanist framework leads me to more liberal progressive positions. I would have to sit down with someone who described himself as a humanist, as a right-wing fundamentalist, conservative humanist something, to get an answer to that issue. I don't have one. So Michael, that's the long way of saying I don't know.
Thank you.
Yes. Kristen, this is not a, oh, are you guys going to hand me the questions?
I will try now for as long as I'm
you.
Connected. So sorry.
No, it's okay.
One question that was, is there a political lobbying group in the US to support and promote a secular humanist agenda?
Kind of.
And there are several. I mean, our parent organization, CFFC's parent organization, the the Freedom from Religion Foundation, definitely, I think, is a political lobbying group. Who else would you mention?
Well, there's the overarching lobby group, the Secular Coalition for America, which has FFRF and American Atheist and a bunch of other organizations as member organizations. They are specifically the lobbying organization for the secular community. And I think the first actual lobbyist and executive director was Lori Lippman Brown, and then Sean Faircloth. And I'm not quite sure who our lobbyist is right now, but if you look up the Secular Coalition for America, you can find out. And yeah, there are people, this is their job. I know American Atheist does work in this area as the Freedom from Religion Foundation, but the SCA is the top level for all of these organizations to be members of.
Yeah, we've worked with most, if not all of them. I would also say that from a local or state perspective, you can find issues that you agree with a group on and go up and speak your mind to your officials and go up to Tallahassee and do stuff. I know we have a lot of people here, maybe not in Florida today, but it doesn't stop you. We've gone up and spoken, and it's really good to get your word out, and you will meet new people when you go and do this. You're going to find people that agree with you when you take the trip to your capital and choose to speak out. And I would encourage people to do that as well. It's not as scary as it seems, at least to me when I went and did it. I was, it's a little overwhelming from my perspective, but then I did it and I'm like, wow, this is not that bad. You have your prepared statement and you can just speak out. So something to think about. Another question that has come up is actually two questions. And the question is, some people who are, how do you process the idea of hell being forced on your mind since a kid and being scared of that idea, and that idea preventing someone from being skeptical and even fully converting to atheism?
So yeah, man. So I don't view atheism as something that someone could convert to, but I get it. And I know that so sometimes we've used the language of deconverting, et cetera. But the real issue that you're asking about is, once we've indoctrinated people, hey, look, there's my alarm going off to tell me it's time to go do the Atheist Experience. If I were back in Texas, but I'm not. So the real question is, once you've indoctrinated people into the idea of hell, and if it lingers, can that, and what do you do about this if it's the case, can that help prevent someone from fully leaving religion? Yes, it absolutely can. And I've met people who have been atheists for 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, who might still wake up in the middle of the night with a nightmare about hell, a hell that they don't even believe in. And yet this ties into this notion about like atheists in foxholes. Now, first of all, there are in fact atheists in foxholes. I was not one of them. I was a believer during my time in the military, but it's a lie that religions tell. I know it's shocking. I'm sure all of you are stunned and shaking your head that religions tell lies, but religions have told whoppers about a God who cares about you and loves you, but if you don't do exactly what he wants you to do, he's going to torture you forever in a terrible place that they refer to as hell. And when we teach this to children, I know Richard Dawkins has called it child abuse, and I think it is a form of child abuse. I don't want to lump everything into one category. And the reason I think that I consider it abusive is because I've watched people who have grown up after having been indoctrinated with those types of beliefs, who are so terrified of asking questions, of doubting. Doubt is a sin. Questioning is a sin. And if all of these things are going to leave you in hell or lead you to hell, and you have no way to disprove this, it's tied to Pascal's wager. Isn't it better, just in case there's a hell, to go ahead and believe? But of course, the problem with that is, whose hell are you trying to avoid? Are you, and shouldn't you perhaps figure out which heaven is best and try to aim for that one? Or should you figure out which hell is worse and try to avoid that one? For the individuals who find themselves still dealing with the baggage of believing in a hell after the indoctrination as children, I can only tell you what worked for me. and not to worry too much if you keep having nagging doubts and fears, because it does get easier the more you continue to question, the more you begin to face this head on. But the questions I asked myself, which were helpful, were first of all, which hell am I afraid of? Have I spent any time worrying about a Buddhist hell, a Muslim hell, a Scientologist hell? And while they're not all called that, you know, there are varieties within those religions that have some rough equivalent. I'm not worried about the negative consequences of any religion other than the one that I was indoctrinated into. That's big. Because if you ask yourself, am I going to sit around and worry about this hell that I was indoctrinated into? Why would I do that when I don't worry about anybody else's religion? Could it be the case that perhaps I was taught the wrong religion rather than just assuming I was perhaps taught the right one, or the baggage that comes along with once you've been indoctrinated, you will get in this position of thinking, what I was indoctrinated into, this notion of hell, is commonplace in other religions too, which seems to give it more gravitas. Like if 5 religions all have a God that wants to punish you, well, then I should be scared of all of them, but I'm going to be especially scared of the one that I was indoctrinated into. And so question number 1 was, how much time have I spent worrying about the hells of other religions? Question number 2 is, what can I do about it? And as far as I can tell, even if there's a hell, there's nothing I can do about it, because without knowing which potential hell is the real one, I don't know what I need to do to avoid it, because what one religion says, a different one disagrees with. And the third question that I tended to ask myself after, how much time have I spent worrying about other ones? And I just explained the second question, which is, which hell should I avoid? Or what can I do about it? Sorry, is, do I have any reason to think any one of them is any more real than the others? And in a world where we've had countless religions and clearly invented by individuals, if 4 of the 5 religions that have a very similar hell are are invented fictions, what's the likelihood that the 5th one is actually the true one? And where's all the evidence for it? I know it's not the rational mind that is afraid of a hell. I realize that a lot of people say, oh, well, you can't reason somebody out of something they were never reasoned into in the first place. The problem is they were reasoned into it. Every single thing that you believe, everything that you accept, you were reasoned into it. It just may well have been flawed reasoning. You became convinced of a hell, and probably for bad reasons. It's not easy. You're already doing some of the best things that you can do. And if you're asking the question on behalf of other people, then the things that you can best do for them is to let them know that they're not alone, that there are communities like this where people can get together to discuss this, where other people have had to deal with those same fears and may or may not have given it up easily, but that life does continue and get better. Teaching the principles of skepticism and asking a question, you keep doing that, and eventually, for most people, I think, that can win out over an indoctrinated fear that may never come to fruition.
That was a very thorough response. Thank you. A question has popped up. How would you work with white supremacists?
Okay, somebody's gonna catch me out being a hypocrite, I'm sure. Because on the one hand, I've said many times that I don't have to have a discussion with David Duke about his views on civil liberties, ever. I don't have to share a stage with him. I can talk about what his views are without him there. So let's take the worst of the worst. Let's grab David Duke and say, Matt, how would you work with David Duke? How would you work with the Ku Klux Klan? I'm not sure. The first step, though, is to find something that we both agree on and to ask the question of, is it necessary for me to work with these specific individuals? Because the KKK is I think the last numbers I saw, there were like maybe 3,000 members, and we're really talking about other organizations that are far more prominent now and less specifically about white supremacy. For example, if my neighbor's house was on fire, we're going to hook up a hose and we're going to help them out and we're going to donate. And I don't care if they're members of the KKK or if the person helping me with the hose is a member of the KKK. That doesn't matter. How would I work with a white supremacist depends on the issue. And quite frankly, in many cases, I may not. Because if there's not a shared goal, like everybody wants a better America, but they don't all agree on what it looks like. So like a better America or a better world. Let's not just be limited to our little screwed up nation. But if everybody wants a better world, but it looks different, then everybody doesn't want the same thing. And so the first thing you have to do is have the conversation about what is our goal. And provided there's a white supremacist with the same goal that I have, then the next step is we need to agree on a path to that goal. All of that requires discussion, debate, data. It's the way we go about changing minds. I can't see too many issues where I would actually do this, which is why I knew from the start this is going to potentially sound hypocritical. But if there were an issue where me and the neighborhood Nazi both agreed on a goal and a way to get there, I'm not going to stop them from helping out. And I'm not going to stop saying, I'm happy to work with this person on building a home for the homeless. And I absolutely think that their views on race and social justice issues are appalling, and I will fight them tooth and nail on that. Just like the Reverend Barry Lynn, formerly the director of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, he and I agree on a great many things. He's moderate to liberal progressive. We definitely agree on church-state separation. And so I can work with him on church-state separation, despite the fact that he's a minister, despite the fact that he may be teaching things that I vehemently disagree with, because we agree with that goal. I just don't know that I share many goals with the average white supremacist, so that might be harder.
I would agree.
I'm not opposed to trying. I just don't think it's likely.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, I have another question. It's a little longer. So the question says, I'm a first-year middle school science teacher. Both religion and politics come up in class. I've maintained a neutral standpoint, but do you have advice for a science teacher teaching sensitive topics such as evolution or the Big Bang to students who are largely unreceptive to these ideas?
Well, I'm not a teacher, and I don't have any real expertise in it. You're not the first person to ask this, by the way, and I'm going to assume you're in a public school. The big thing is you teach the curriculum, and if students are being disruptive, like what the Creation Museum instructs them to do to disrupt your class and say, well, were you there? Were you there? Were you there? I'm sure the school, I don't know exactly what the rules are in your school, but if I'm teaching a classroom of people and someone's being disruptive in any way, they get to leave. They're not going to deprive everybody else of an education. And I would imagine that as a teacher, you can look around a classroom and you can see which students are remotely interested and which ones are taking naps or don't care or don't do the homework and all these things. If I were teaching, and like I said, I have no expertise in this specific area with students, I would try actually to enlist the help of the students who do care in encouraging others to care as well. Because right now we do a number of things in schools that I think are very wrong and very broken. Number one, we teach people that saying I don't know is a bad thing. We punish ignorance. Now, I'm not talking about somebody who just didn't do the assignment, but we punish ignorance. Would you come up to the blackboard and show everybody that you don't know the answer to this question? Ha ha ha, everybody points. When I was in school, one of the other problems, I don't know if this still persists, I would imagine it does to varying degrees, is the smart kids, the geeky kids, get ostracized. And what that does, I think, is it limits the ability to teach everybody in the class, because they don't want to look like the smart people. They don't want to be the smart people, which is perhaps why we have flat earthers and mask holes, and all the people the young people that you're talking about are like, well, I don't care about this or this. I don't want to learn about the Big Bang, or my church disagrees with it. It's got to be a way to handle disruptive students. I'll leave that with, you and your administration or your ministers at your school. But I would try, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I would try to enlist the help of the other students. Figure out if there's two people who are friends who like each other and one of them cares about the subject and the other one doesn't. Use the one that cares to help with the one that doesn't. Apart from just constantly pushing for fun ways to learn, like I get my news from Seth Meyers more than anybody else, and I watch news all the time, but every day I'm waiting for a closer look. I get my science from all of the really fun YouTube video channels, the Smarter Every Day, the Curiosity stuff, the ones with millions of followers, Veritasium, where they're going out and they're doing experiments and fun. I know that there are kids who will not pay attention in school, but who will watch those videos. We should leverage all of that. We have the YouTube and the educators that are putting content out there. They are the 2020 equivalent of the Encyclopedia Britannica from when I was a kid, except it doesn't suck and it's not boring to just thumb through. You're finding something interesting all the time. Getting actual curriculum where state boards of education vote on school books and we hand out the school books. And Texas is a single adoption state, which is why it's very important to make sure that Texas school books don't get awful, because then other people's books will get awful. But we're moving away from books. We don't have as much print media. Magazines are dying. Even people who are selling physical copies of books are generally selling them to people who want a physical copy, maybe for an autograph or to put up on their shelf and display. But by and large, we read everything electronically. So why not make sure that we are actually producing educational content the way we did when public broadcast service, when I was a kid, not only had Sesame Street, but the letter people and all these things. That's what we have on YouTube now. So what we need to do is convince the school boards to take this content and like rubber stamp approve educational content as curriculum. So rather than opening up your books to chapter 7, now it's okay, everybody get your tablet out, or we're going to put this up on the big screen. We're going to watch this and we're going to talk about it. We do that stuff at the Atheist Community of Austin on a regular basis with the philosophy meetups. We don't do it now, obviously, but that's the best I can come up with.
Those are all great ideas. I wanted to also add that Bertha Vasquez of the Teacher Institute for Evolutionary Science, who the Richard Dawkins Foundation helped to get that off the ground. There's a link. They're actually based out of Florida, though they travel all over the United States. And Bertha and other people who are involved with the organization come to schools and will help actually work with science teachers to help them get everything going. And they also provide, I guess you'd say, resources to help the teachers teach. So I would strongly encourage you to take a look at that. And Bertha is just fabulous.
Great, thank you.
Say enough about her. Okay, somebody asked, how do they find you on Twitch?
Oh, it's twitch.tv/Matt Dillahunty. I know, it's a shock, but yeah, I'm on there quite a bit.
All right, next question. Is there any evidence that religions or their believers are trying to reach out to us?
Yes. So on the one hand, the bulk of evangelicals are constantly trying to reach out to us because they are under the Great Commission and are convinced that they need to, convert us to Jesus. I think in the spirit of the question that Phil was asking about, are they trying to reach out to us to perhaps work cooperatively? Yes, in fact, there are many different pockets of religion, denominations, local churches who are far more willing to reach out and work with us towards other common goals. It's just not always easy to find because it's much easier for the oh, let's say the Episcopalian Church of Austin to reach out to the Presbyterian Church and 3 other churches in their neighborhood, and where they might play softball and work together toward a common goal. Maybe, and it's been years since I've done this and I can't anymore because I've got torn rotator cuffs. Maybe we need an atheist softball team that just plays the churches. That sort of recreational thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be softball. Maybe get a gaming group where you team up, where it's going to be the atheists playing pool against the Pentecostals down the street or whatever. That's how you build those relationships. And all of a sudden now they know that we are someone we can potentially reach out to. On some fronts, we're going to have to reach out first. We're going to have to say, look, hi, we're atheists helping the homeless, or we're the secular active community for social change in this in Orlando, and we'd like to work with you. Because I'll tell you, while this church didn't reach out to me, I'm also part of a couple of magic communities, and they often meet at churches. And we met at a Baptist church in Austin, where there was this beautiful big sign that was, it's like the ones in many of your yards, where it's like, hey, in this church, we believe Black Lives Matter, science is real, women's rights are human rights, trans rights are human rights. In a Baptist church in Austin, Texas, is a banner 30 feet tall in their foyer that says these things. It's the weirdest fucking thing I've ever seen, because I was raised Southern Baptist. I walk into a Baptist church and I see that and I'm like, what's going on? But it makes me so optimistic about the future when I see Baptist churches doing this. And absolutely there is opportunity to work with them. They just need to know who to reach out to on the common goals.
And I want to say I completely agree. Here in Central Florida, the Central Florida Freethought community, we've reached out to the Interfaith Council of Central Florida, and we reached out back in 2012, and we are now representing secular humanism on the council and are helping to guide conversations that reflect us as well. And we're included with things such as the Martin Luther King Day. Through the city of Orlando, we go in and we're able to offer a secular perspective. And we've been invited to educate through the Interfaith Council here in Orlando. And there are groups like this throughout the country. They may not be as active as what we have here in Central Florida, but I would definitely encourage people to reach out and try to work with groups like that. I think it can really make a big difference, and you'd be surprised how welcoming they can be. At least that's been our experience. But you never know till you try. Another question: as an atheist, how do you deal with living in a very religious state like Texas or Florida? I encounter religious pressure or agenda on a daily basis where I live in Florida.
So, I have to do this from a slightly different kind of personal perspective, because I live in Austin, and my standard joke is, while we're surrounded by Texas, we will never surrender, because Austin is this incredibly liberal, progressive, I'm not afraid of anything. I go to the show, I'm not worried about consequences or anything. That might be different in other areas of Texas. So I tend to look at this more from a family perspective of, I'm going to have to deal with religious family members, and how do I do that? Because the community that I live in, while Texas is still red and didn't tip blue, I don't have to deal with it all that much in Austin. So yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask, and I'll tell you why. Because yesterday when we were driving around, there were a bunch of Trump supporters in a parking lot waving their flags, and one presumes proclaiming victory. And all I wanted to do was turn the car around and go stand there and point and laugh at them. That's probably not the best course of action to make change or to deal with this, but sometimes I think that's what you have to do. If you have been in a press position, surrounded as a minority with religious folks all around you and watching what's going on, sometimes just celebrate the win If there's a small win, celebrate it. Let off some steam. Build communities where you have other people to talk to. There are minds that we can change, and there are some that we probably can't. The problem here is I don't know how to tell the difference. If I walk up to somebody on the street, I usually can't immediately tell, is this a mind that I could change, or is this a mind that I can't change? And so I have to treat them the same, which is I try to take the steps to change both minds. And for the minds that we can change, that's the goal. That's what we should work on. For the ones we can't, you change the world around them. It's going to take time. There's no quick and easy solution. I worked software and hardware for years. I've been a air quotes professional atheist, making a living off Patreon and lectures and debates and other stuff for 5 years now. And I wouldn't have thought that was possible. But I'll tell you, while I think we're making great progress and I'm constantly encouraged, I think I have amazing job security because I don't think we're going to get rid of religion in my lifetime. So celebrate the wins, build the communities of people who share your values, and in addition to celebrating the wins, make sure that you are doing everything you can in your area, and point and laugh on occasion. I know people who get really offended. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? If let's say I flip off a person who I vehemently disagree with on a social issue, I like the fact that that upsets people, because literally all I did was raise a digit, and everything else is something in their head that's an interpretation of, oh, you did something wrong to me. Well, okay, you took away the right of trans people to be in the military. Which of those actions, you marginalizing the trans community or me raising a finger, do you think was really the worst of the two? You may not get much agreement, but I'm not even going to pretend like I always do it right. Sometimes I yell, sometimes I laugh, sometimes I actually sit there for hours talking to someone, trying to change their mind, even if it feels futile.
Oh, thank you. I think that we all need to, as I've mentioned before, make sure that you're joining groups like the ACA and the CFFC, or create a group. If there's not something in your area, make it, build it yourself. And you can align yourselves with and join groups with people who share your values. You're going to find people who are more alike than you think. Equality Florida, Planned Parenthood, Florida Citizens for Science, all of these things are groups that need volunteers, they need people, and they will be there to support you when you want to raise a digit to somebody. So in the spirit of the Atheist Experience, we're going to have our last question. When someone brings up the fine-tuning argument, I usually respond with the anthropodic, I'm reading it and I'm having trouble, principle suggesting a multiverse. But doesn't the idea of a multiverse violate Occam's razor?
Well, I'm not sure if it violates Occam's razor. So when somebody brings up fine-tuning argument, I don't think that the anthropic principle necessarily suggests a multiverse. I don't know that I would ever use a speculative notion like the multiverse as a response to an argument. It's really good in some conversations, because one of the things that we need to do is, here's a question, why is there something rather than nothing? In order to come up with the right answer, you have to first make a list of candidate explanations. And of course, in order to get the right answer, one of those candidate explanations needs to be the right answer. And so it's reasonable for us to say, well, how did you rule out? If we had 4 candidate explanations, you could begin ruling them out. How did you rule out a multiverse is something that is a good question to ask, because I don't know how anybody could rule it out. I also don't think we should be ruling it in. But you may be right that a multiverse might violate Occam's razor as long as the multiverse is still speculative. When it's supported by evidence, then of course I don't think it would violate Occam's razor, and that'd be a much better time to use it. But yeah, I think you're on the right track.
Okay, so do you have any final closing words and any final things that you want to mention or bring up or share with us as we close out today's meeting?
Oh my gosh. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I know it's virtual. I could have done this from home, but I was in Florida, so it was like extra special for me this time. follow the health guidelines in your area, do what you can to stay safe and to keep other people safe, and keep doing what we can to educate the world, not only about science, which is something we're all passionate about, but who we are as secularists, that we're not necessarily the evil boogeyman. I know that what I do on, for example, the Atheist Experience isn't to everybody's taste. Somebody's like, oh, Matt gets mad too much, or he yells too much, or he hangs up too much, or he talks over, or whatever. I need as many people out in the world trying to do the same thing I'm doing in as many different ways as possible, because there's not necessarily one right way to do this. Somebody that I reach one way, you're going to reach another. You're going to catch more flies with honey or vinegar. Well, maybe not. I know about flies like vinegar. I just want to see people healthy, happy, active, and working towards a better world for all of us. I'm still optimistic, even after all of this, even after 2020, even after running around looking like Bane everywhere I go. And, whoa, Batman. And I can't wait until we get the vaccines and this becomes as minimalistic as perhaps a bad seasonal flu, so that we can come back to Florida, hang out again, and hopefully in person. But if I have to do virtual meetings for the rest of my life, I'll do it, and I'll work to get better at it. So thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. It really has been great to have you with us, and I appreciate your patience with the audio. Please be sure to drive safely back home. We look forward to getting back together with you in Florida for a future event, hopefully in person. So before we go, I'd like a quick reminder. We are continuing our online social meetups, including Freethought Cafe, secular women's groups, meetings as Zoom meetings. These events are online, so you can join us from anywhere you have an internet connection. To find out how to join us, you need to sign up on Meetup at meetup.com/CFL Freethought. If you need help connecting, just reach out, let us know. The email for our organization is info@cflfreethought.org. Again, if you want any upcoming activity emails, sign up at tinyurl CFFC newsletter. And with that, we're going to let you go for now. Thanks, everyone. We hope you're staying safe and healthy, and that you have a happy holiday season this year and make the most of it. Bye for now. Thank you.
Bye.